Well, I have been waiting 4 weeks for the replacement parts for this engine. I think they maybe got lost in the mail. So I'm going to contact the seller about that and see what happens. But I decided, since I have this yellow ignition unit, to uh, set that up to test the engine. So I'm going to take the original ignition out of the R18 here and then just wire up the yellow ignition module on the side here. That means I'm going to remove the R18 ignition, and then the yellow ignition module has a hall sensor. It's on the end of a harness, but it's on that chip board, so I'm going to replace it with one of the little ones I have. The one on the board is non-polarized, which means it will react to any magnetic field that passes it. The replacement chips I have, the datasheet says those are polarized, and that just means that they respond to a negative north or south magnetic flux. I forget what the sheet said. And at the end of the day, all that means is if it doesn't work, turn it over. It's got an upside and a downside when the magnet passes it. So I stripped out to make a couple harnesses, and I figured I would do two of these at once, just to make them up with two sensors and two extra extensions. And you can see I'm tinning all of the wires on the servo extensions, because that's the kind of plug that's on the yellow module. The servo extension wires that I have are steel wires, so I used plenty of flux to get them to tin up with the solder, and then very carefully um, set up the new chips or components. You see I went and got a piece of paper towel. That paper towel is wet, and when I do small parts like this, I usually use a piece of paper towel to cool the part between soldering so I don't accidentally overheat it and cook it, especially for things like hall sensors that are pretty sensitive to temperature sometimes. So I did that. It was a bit of a project to get the wires to connect with the legs on the chips, but I made that happen, and then used my heat gun to get the heat shrink tube on there. And once I had that set up, I was able to hook it all up and test it. I took the end off of the ignition lead there and tinned it up so that it wouldn't be free spiky wires to go through the ignition boot. And then I tested here without the spark plug in and had a good spark. So I put the plug on and checked everything. And when I went to put the sensor in, I remembered that the muffler was in the way, so I took that off, put it in, tested it, and then had to reshrink the heat shrink to make sure it was tight so it would fit in there better. But everything worked fine. That yellow ignition module is a really good. I got lucky. That's a good, really hot one. The snap it makes on ignition is very, very loud. I did voiceover here because while I was working, my roommate was watching TV, so all of the audio was terrible, and I needed to redo it. So I've got this assembled and tested, and we will see if it runs.